All right, folks, welcome back to the Roswell UFO Symposium. I am your co host, Mike. We have co host Toby, or Toby. And Shane actually has the day off. It's actually Veterans Day, so happy Veterans Day to Shane and all the veterans out there. Shane will actually be attending a Corey Feldman concert tonight, so congratulations on that, Shane. And I hope you have a fun night. Before we get started, everybody should go check out our guest Vinnie Adams documentary series Phenomenology. I have his all links linked down below. I watched it. I really recommend it, especially this topic kind of varies. We think of crafts and technology and things like that, but plasmoids and lights and things like that are often overlooked, so I recommend checking that out. I really recommend it. And our guest is Vinnie Adams, and I have his links down below. Check out all of his stuff. He's part of Disclosure Team. You can find him on Twitter. I really appreciate you coming on, Vinnie. Welcome.
Thank you so much. I'm honored to be here and look forward to the conversation.
Absolutely. So I watched Phenomenology when it came out. I don't know, it was like a month and a half ago, maybe 2 months ago. And I was talking with Dan about it. And whose idea was it to do this? Was it like a group thing, or who came up with the concept of making this docu-series?
So the guy behind it is a guy called Ashley Cowie. He's a Scottish filmmaker, explorer. He used to do a lot of shows on Travel Channel. He's been on Ancient Aliens back in the day, and he currently lives in Colombia. He's married to a Colombian. So he got in touch with me through Instagram because he's now running a UAP Colombia account. So he's kind of moved out of the sort of ancient history type research into sort of UFO, UAP. And he happens to live in a rural valley that has this 400-year-old mystery of these anomalous lights appearing on the mountain. And he'd always wanted to sort of put a team together to actually do some investigations. And so we were talking most of 2021 to try and make it happen. And, lo and behold, by February this year, we were out there and getting it done. So, yeah, really exciting, really, really good experience. And I can let you know kind of exclusively that yesterday I booked my flights to return to go back in April of 2023 for season 2. So I'm excited about that.
Yeah, I saw
How
you
long?
announce it on Twitter. That's awesome.
Yeah, how long did the filming take for the? I guess it would be the first season if you guys are doing another one.
Yeah, so we were there for 2 weeks, and out of the 14 days, but I think we had 12 days of filming, literally from the moment we sort of woke up to last thing at night every single day. So yeah, it was all compacted into 12 days, but we certainly got a lot done. It was really, really good.
So when you guys were shooting, like there was this, I mean, what do you consider like a phenomenologist? This guy, this older guy who kind of had an idea of what's going on. His name's slipping my mind, but is there a lot of people like that, or is it like here where it's kind of like a niche thing where only some people are interested in this, or how does that work?
Yeah, do you know what? It was really eye-opening because the moment you sort of walk into the towns and people had heard that what we were doing because it's just that kind of community, and everybody had a story to tell. Everybody talks about it like it's just part of everyday life. If you just look around the local towns, there's huge murals of churches and things like that, but they've always got a UFO painted somewhere in these beautiful murals. It's just completely different way of life and totally accepted. There's no stigma, no ridicule. I mean, a lot of it does date back hundreds of years, so it's just tradition. So they do associate it sometimes with religion, or they associate it with like gods and things like that. So yeah, it was just amazing to be able to talk freely and openly with people about the subject. It was a totally different experience.
Pretty big change of pace from say where you're from. I'm guessing.
Oh
Well,
yeah, definitely. It's other end of the spectrum completely. Where I live in the north of England, and I think most of England, it's just if no one really talks about it. I think people sometimes it'll come up in conversation, and people will be like, "Oh yeah, I watched an episode of something like Ancient Aliens late at night when I've been up after a night out or something random like that," and that's that's the limit, really. It's unfortunate, but hey.
Yeah, I'm in the middle of alien country, so it's a bit different here.
I can imagine. Yeah.
When you have a UFO McDonald's, you know your town is different.
Yeah, that looks
Yeah,
cool.
I mean, South America is obviously really fascinating from that regard. James Fox's new documentary, Moment of Contact. And the interesting thing about that was I wasn't aware that there was so many credible Brazilian encounters. I knew the main ones, but I didn't know that there was so many. Kind of goes through the timeline in that documentary. Um, but you look at what you're talking about, the lights, and then I even what reminded me of watching Phenomenology was Terrence McKenna's True Hallucinations, where him and his brother go down to Colombia, and there he has what you would call a UFO experience on a high dose of psilocybin. So yeah, that whole region, is interesting from that standpoint. Is there any idea? Is there some sort of scientific explanation that gets pushed on it, or is it something that's just truly anomalous?
From the locals' perspective, it's definitely anomalous to them. When we were there, the first thing we wanted to do was, really dig down and see and look at it from a skeptical point of view and kind of work from the bottom up. We'll try and rule out everything first. So while we were there, we were looking at the magnetic makeup of the area, which was quite interesting in itself because there's two mountains that sit opposite each other in the valley. One of them is in a negative charged area, the other one is positive. So if there's kind of some water underground as well that links them, it's almost like we've got a battery there that in the season changes, the weather can shift quite dramatically throughout a single day. So to me, that was like my first sort of plausible potential explanation. But we didn't have any equipment to kind of do that. So I think by season 2, we will be able to sort of take a bit more of some kind of sensor systems out there, and we will be speaking to local scientists. So there's a couple of observatories nearby. So we're going to kind of go that direction instead of starting at the top with UFOs and things like that. We're going to go science first and just go through there and see if we can just rule it out and try and find an explanation.
That's awesome. Um, yeah, I wonder though too, like, do you think it's plasma or do you think it's something else, or you have no idea?
It's so difficult because it took, seeing it when we did, it was just incredible to see. I've never seen anything like it, but my rational brain kicked in instantly, and I was like, we've got to figure this out before I say, I'm a UFO witness, because I just don't see it like that. I need to get to the bottom of it logically and using as much of the scientific method and investigative method that we can. It's anomalous because we don't know what it is. And if it's plasma, I think it's some kind of earth lights that's probably quite rare and warrants study in itself. So either way, whatever it turns out to be, I'm just excited to kind of dig deeper into it.
It kind of reminds me of the Hesiod lights.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's exactly that sort of thing that, I've spoken to Erling Strand. Hopefully he'll be able to give us some insight. He's not watched the series yet. So yeah, that's the kind of people we want to be talking to see if they, have any kind of opinion on it from their sort of professional perspective.
Yeah, South America seems to be kind of a hot spot these days as far as sightings go. My friend in Argentina just sent me, they had a mass sighting, and I'll have to have Chase dig up the link, but there was people recording. I know there's some government people there. I can't say who just because, but the U.S. government is definitely looking into what's on over there.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, in Colombia, where we were, not too far away is a Colombian military base, and they do a lot of operations with the US military as well, regularly. So yeah, we're very aware of that, because a lot of drones fly over the valley as well, and they're kind of like triangular drones, and they themselves just look totally anomalous. But because we were aware of them, we knew exactly what we were looking at in that case.
Is it the same team for the season 2 or part 2? Is it you, Dan, and Ashley?
So far, it is going to be me, Dan, Ashley, and then the rest of the team is yet to be decided, because we do open up a few tickets or positions for members of the public or anybody that wants to come and be a part of it and experience it all. So yeah, it's going to be interesting to see who the final team is. Definitely, because we were lucky with the first season because we all got on so well from day one, and I think that really helped with the investigation to just bounce off of each other and work really well together. So yeah, hopefully we get that the second time around.
Yeah, you guys can borrow Shane. It'll probably be a disaster, but it'll be fun, I promise.
Oh no, I'm down, definitely.
We'll ship them to you full of edibles.
It'll be UFO Congress all over again.
I mean, what was the most fascinating aspect? I mean, aside from like the actual lights, like, had you been to South America before, or was that kind of like the whole thing, just like a whole culture shock / experience shock? Like, it had to have been kind of just like a whole adventure in itself, right?
Absolutely. From the moment me and Dan left England and the flight, it was just the anticipation build up for that long journey. And then the moment we stepped off the plane in Bogota, it was just culture shock. It really, really was. It was incredible. I was just looking around and we drove an hour outside of Bogota and we're suddenly in this rural, beautiful valley, which is kind of on the edge of the Andean plateau. So, you've got these booming hills and mountains and stuff. So yeah, just amazing. I can't recommend, I always thought sort of about Colombia, it's just dangerous and it's cartels and things like that. But where we were, it was just the most amazing people, the most amazing culture, the food, everything was completely different to what I'm used to. So I really enjoyed it. Yeah, definitely.
That's awesome. Let's see here. We got a question. It looks like somebody wants to know, that's a bad kitty wants to know, what's up with the tattoo on your neck?
That's my, I got a Queen's crown.
There you go.
So I don't know if you can see that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what's your background with like the whole UFO, UAP stuff? Like, people listening that are not familiar with your work, like how did you get into this? How long have you been into it? What's the backstory?
I guess like a lot of people, I grew up with science fiction. So the end of the 70s with Star Wars and all that kind of awesome stuff. And then I guess around 2010, I'd always been interested in kind of fringe topics, let's say, whether it be Atlantis, the Bermuda Triangle, Bigfoot, UFOs, everything. So I'd always watch documentaries on the subject, but UFOs seemed to grab me that little bit more, but I always found myself coming away wanting more. It wasn't giving me what I wanted. So I just decided to do some research and from then I spent many years just going through documents in multiple archives, US, UK, and other countries as well. I would stay up late at night and just try and put little puzzle pieces together. It just became this thing that I did all the time. And I guess then the pandemic hit. I was still doing it, and I just decided to do some social media accounts, Instagram being the first, and just put out little posts on what I found intriguing with the subject, and it just grew ridiculously fast. And suddenly meeting all these new people who'd already been in the community and just building this network of friends, it just inspired me to keep doing more and more. And yeah, so that kind of put me where I am, I suppose. Just a lot of people motivating me and egging me on to start a YouTube channel. And yeah, it's just, I haven't really had time to stop and think about it in the last 2 or 3 years since it changed. But yeah, still researching a lot as well. I try and pick a case and try and work on it. But generally, I don't really put much out about it unless there's something new that comes from it. It can be frustrating when you spend a lot of time on a case and you just kind of hit brick walls, and it's difficult. I guess the one different case would be the Calvin case, which I was working on with David Clark and a couple of others in the team, which we managed to get the photograph, which was huge, but we're still very much deep in that investigation, trying to find out more information on the witnesses, the possible pilot that was flying the jet around the object. But with these investigations, you find a lead and you go deep down that direction, and half the time you kind of spend a month doing that and you hit a brick wall and you have to go down another. So these things take a lot of time and a lot of work and a lot of waiting around for people to respond to emails and messages and stuff. So that's very much ongoing, but we just wish we could have a huge breakthrough and an update for people soon, but fingers crossed.
Yeah, absolutely. And actually, I think,
Congratulations on
yeah, I think
8,000 subscribers. Just throwing that in there, Mike.
no, I was gonna say, I mean, isn't that what you wanted to bring up, the Calvin photo, Toby? Isn't that what most interests you?
Yeah, I was just wondering if you could kind of talk us through the process of how that all came about.
Yeah, I mean, so Dr. David Clark, he's been working the case for over a decade. You know, he used to work with the National Archives on the release of their UFO files, probably about 15 years ago. And over a span of a few years, they would drop in batches and batches at a time. And in the, he actually found the Condign report as well, which was the 2000 report on UAP done by DI-55 Defense Intelligence here in the UK. And there's sections in there which are redacted, but there is one sort of basic line drawing of the Calvin photograph. And that sort of sparked his curiosity. So he was always trying to find these photographs, you know, to see if they still existed. And I guess last year, when I sort of started working with him, he had just made contact with the former RAF press officer, Craig Lindsay in Scotland, who was reluctant to talk at first, but the more David sort of spoke to him, he first of all gave David a photocopy of the original photograph, which that in itself, because it had more detail than this line drawing, was really something. You know, we knew we were onto something. But after a bit more pushing, we discovered that he did have an original print, which had come directly off the negatives at the Scottish Daily Record newspaper. So after a lot of negotiations, Craig reluctantly decided to donate the photograph to the Sheffield Hallam University Special Collections Archives, which Dr. Clark is kind of part of. It's an archive for folklorists and strange sort of documents and images and things like that. So that's where it currently resides now. So yeah, it was an interesting process, definitely.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I definitely thought that image was pretty bizarre, and I thought it was bizarre the way that people were trying to debunk it too. I remember we were doing a space. I forget who's. I think it might have been Sam's space, but Dan came in there and was talking about it, and then Mick West jumped in, and it was just like a whole thing. And he's trying to say, "Oh, it's like the mountains in the background and somebody on a lake or something like all these different explanations." But to me, I mean, I don't know. It didn't look like that at all. It didn't look like a reflection. I mean, I'm pretty savvy with Adobe, Illustrator and Photoshop and stuff like that. You can tell when something's like, an image. And I take a lot of my cousin Maurice's photos and doctor them up for him. And, he's got a lot of water images. You can definitely tell when it's like even a crystal clear lake or body of water, you can still kind of tell the reflection. And I just didn't get that vibe from it at all. So.
Well, I think
Yeah, I
they
mean, I
pivoted
certainly.
from that. Sorry, I think they pivoted from it being that to being the top of a mountain. Who was it that actually went out and took pictures of the site?
So a friend of ours, Strafe Wilson, he's been out to the site numerous times trying to find the location and the different angles that it could have been taken at, which really did help as well. But, we had the photographic analysis done by a specialist, which we released as well. But we've also had other analyses done privately, which we haven't put out into the public domain. But also the one thing that, well, there's a couple of things. We've spoken to Defense Intelligence that investigated the case at the time. Now, they were they can't come out publicly and say who they are because of they've signed oaths and stuff like that. But they say it's definitely not a hoax. We kind of knew what it was, and it's kind of all they could tell us. But if you look at the time, DI-55 investigated it, analyzed it, and they said, yeah, it's a legitimate photograph. We have no idea at the time what the object is. And then a couple of years later, JARIC, which is a specialist photographic analysis unit within the Ministry of Defense, they also concluded that it was a genuine image. But this also caught the attention of the CIA. I think it was a 2 or 3 star general in the US was extremely angry about all this. And for all of that, and meetings happened in the Pentagon between British Defense Intelligence and the US military about this image. I mean, if it was just a rock in a lake or a mountain, none of that would happen. And all these investigative bodies that concluded its legitimacy. I don't know what it is. I think the point is, first, before we kind of get to that, is that we need to speak to witnesses, because we've got witness testimony, but it's secondhand. We just need to try and hope that we can find them and go from there. Otherwise, it may just be another one of these mysteries that remains elusive for the rest of time.
I mean, the vibe I got was some sort of like biological camouflage or cloaking, or like if you look at it, it's got like a weird, almost like it just rose up out of a bog or something. Like it has that like vibe to it.
Yeah, I think initially when we released the photograph, a lot of people were doing AI enhancements on it, and that's what kind of started coming out of it. But I think what it is, it's just the age and the lack of quality of the image itself that kind of gives it that. I think personally, I think that's just what it is. I don't think it was anything. I don't think it was anything particularly high tech. I keep changing my mind depending on conversations I have with people. I
I mean,
certainly don't
could
think
be
it was a.
biological though too, right? I mean, think about like nature and stuff like. I'm not saying that the craft was necessarily biological, but I mean, who knows? We've
You're
all
calling it a
seen.
rock.
I mean, yeah. I mean, Chase thinks it's a frog. Shout out to Chase. No, but I mean, I like I said, it had that look to it. But yeah, I mean, it's I don't know. I think it's one of the better photos I've seen. Photos are like, yeah, like I think James Fox found a bunch of good ones for the phenomenon. When he's going through that progression of timeline.
Yeah.
The older ones, but there's a lot of like fake ones, like Tom DeLonge posting those Adamski, lantern pics and stuff like that, and then deleting.
Yeah.
It's like stuff like that. Like usually pics don't really do it for me, but that one was interesting. I will say that.
Yeah, I think again, I've got to be careful not to try and conclude and overhype things and say this is a genuine UFO, like it's not of this earth, because I don't like kind of get into that without the actual data and evidence to kind of put my mind, in that position. So yeah, it's just focus on the investigation for now, and if we get anywhere with it, then great. If not, hey, it was a good journey getting the image out, and it's always been a really interesting case. And yeah, let's just see what the future holds for the investigation. I guess that's all I can really do.
I know the first thing I did when I saw it online was I emailed Nick Pope asking him if it was the photo or not. And of course, he couldn't confirm or deny, but I'm pretty sure I know which way he was leaning.
Oh yeah, absolutely, definitely.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not necessarily interested in like the photos or the videos or stuff like that. Obviously, I pay attention to it. Obviously, I find it interesting. But I always find the connection with the mind the most interesting, because without the mind, there is none of this, whether it's there or not, or a byproduct of us or consciousness or whatever. It, through your phenomenology documentary, did you get that sense? Because I feel like that's what we're missing here. We look at it as like purely, in Western society, that is, purely like technological or separate or something like that, is where from everything I've read and seen, it's more of like a spiritual thing with more of like the indigenous and non-Western cultures. So like, do you get that vibe, or did you get that vibe when you were there shooting phenomenology, or do they have people that are interested in it like we are, in the sense that it's like, oh, it's black tech, or it's an alien spaceship from outer space or whatever?
Yeah, it was funny because a lot of people we spoke to thought they were genuine UFOs, like physical craft that they claim to have seen in the daytime and things like that. Whereas others believe it's the gods, and others believe it's people that ancient tribes, people that had committed suicide by jumping off that particular mountain peak where the light is seen the most. So there was a whole plethora, even within the local community, of differences of opinion. I guess for me personally, just being in that environment for those 2 weeks, speaking to these kind of people, it was very easy, or it could have been very easy to kind of slip into that thought process. So I was very conscious not to allow myself to drift too far into one direction, and try and remain, critical thinking, and yeah, I can see why people might go down that route. But then it's kind of with the whole subject, and been doing what I've been doing for the last few years. I was very much looking at these documents coming from a nuts and bolts angle. But now, I've learned about all these new other possibilities, and it's opened my mind to all these potentials. And I think, yeah, I'll never conclude on anything without data. So yeah, it's just nice that there are different areas within this subject that people research and look into. Some are probably a lot more difficult to actually physically research or investigate. But yeah, it's just allowed me to sort of be more open-minded and to respect people's differences of opinion and not hate on them, because it'd be too easy to just shut people down because I don't believe in that. Where yeah, I'd never do that to anybody. So I think it's just made me a better and more open-minded person in general.
Yeah, no, I mean, I completely agree.
Chase has a question. What does Vinny think about the beings that were potentially found in Varginha, Brazil?
Yeah, that's an absolutely fascinating case, isn't it? Really good documentary. I'm a fan of James Fox's work. I mean, I don't really think anything of them because, all we have is witness testimony. Now, in any investigation, that's not usually enough to kind of go on. It doesn't mean I don't believe the witnesses and what they say they saw. That's not for me to judge. I think it's James himself said it right, where he went, he did the interviews and the investigation, he put it in a film, and he lets people decide for themselves. I mean, for me personally, as someone who does like to kind of dig deeper, it leaves a lot more work to be done. And I think James is looking to do more. I think for a lot of people who maybe not so much as deeply embedded in the subject or the community, it's a really compelling documentary, and some might come away from that being complete believers, which is absolutely fine if that's what people take away from it. Again, I'm not there to say, well, you can't prove this or you can't prove that. That's not my position and stuff. So yeah, I'd love it to be these little red-eyed aliens that are somewhere being kept, the bodies. Yeah, I'd love that. And I hope James gets these elusive videos.
Do we wish it was that, though? Do we really? Because
I don't know. Why not?
I guess. I mean,
I don't expect, if we ever get the answers, I don't just expect it
I mean,
to all
that
be
picture,
love and light.
I don't know if anybody else felt this way, but that picture that I saw, the first thing I thought was Chupacabra.
That's a good point. Yeah.
Because that's kind of like what the original Chupacabra looked like. I mean, it's kind of morphed the mythology. I'm not a cryptid guy, but that is the image that I made the connection to when I saw that drawing. Again, I don't know.
What do you make of the ammonia smell, Mike?
I mean, that could be a lot of different stuff. It could. I don't know. I mean, I watched the documentary. I thought it was great. A great documentary. As far as the actual case, though, I mean, you can't deny the one guy is like emotional. He's like crying. He's beating on the ground. He's like, a key right here. He's like, this is where it happened. And he's like very emotional. It's like, obviously that dude experienced something. Does that mean, could it have been some sort of experimental technology? It could be. I mean, that smell, I mean, you think about like what's going on with all these engineering and aeronautical companies and, all the black tech and stuff. You don't know what they're using with all this stuff. I mean, yeah, you have conventional jet fuel and stuff like that, but there could be something weird we don't even know about. So that's a possibility in my mind with that whole thing. It could be something natural too, though. I mean, that smell isn't that sulfur smell or ammonia is a natural smell, even though it might not seem like it. It definitely is. So yeah, I don't know what to think. I would say though that like Vinny said it perfectly earlier. Like I always hold my reservations to make a final point on something. My personal philosophy for the last few years has always been just keep evolving, keep it moving. Like I'll never just agree to one thing because information's evolving, philosophies are evolving, science is evolving, everything's evolving. So to subject yourself or die on one hill, I think is a mistake in many regards. But again, we all have different takes on it. So
Well, let's pivot real quick. Since you brought this up yesterday, Vinny, do you believe there is a physical Bigfoot or not?
That's a really, really good question. Do I, again, I don't like saying I believe. I think it's too full on to say
did
I
you not hear
believe.
my rant, Toby? Come on, bro. It's evolving.
I think potentially there could be something out there that we haven't really discovered that may have been witnessed. Yeah, that could be a possibility. Some ancient relative, relic hominid, something connected to Gigantopithecus, all these kind of different theories that are thrown around the Bigfoot kind of community, which, I've only really dipped my toes into in the past. So I've not really, done any actual research on it. But again, yeah, I'm very open-minded to the possibility. People are claiming to have seen things, then, it's difficult. You just can't believe that they're just mistaking bears and other things for these really different human type hairy creatures. I just don't know. I'd love to believe in it, and I do want it to be real, but again, I can't go that far without data
I'm
evidence.
open-minded. And people are gonna get mad. But no. Give me some bones. Give me some something, DNA. Like last night, this is actually what I brought. I asked everybody in a DM thread we were on if they believed in a physical Bigfoot. And I mean, our buddy Daniel Allen Jones, he studies this stuff and he goes to all these conferences and he's like, yeah, people are seeing stuff. And I believe that people are seeing stuff. Now, for me,
Right.
my thing is like, where are the bones wherever, and it's like everybody jumped to like, oh well, they maybe they bury their dead, or maybe they dig super deep, or do this or do that or whatever. You're coming up with like crazy explanations for something that may or may not even exist. So I mean, I just laid out a couple explanations, possibly like you mentioned Gigantopithecus. Well, hominids lived along Gigantopithecus, so maybe it's some epigenetic memory of living alongside this thing. Maybe it's a fear response thing. Your endogenous chemicals get rushing, or your fear center, your amygdala gets going, and you're in the woods, and all sorts of stuff starts happening, and maybe you have some sort of a epigenetic flashback. There's feral human beings, believe it or not. There's since the beginning of civilization, there's always been these wild. They call them hairy people or wild people, and they live on the outskirts. Could be that. Could be a lot of different things. I think. I mean, yeah, bears with mange or bears without hair. Those look bizarre. If you've never seen one, go look that up, because that does look crazy. If I saw that in the dark, I'd lose it. So. I'm not a Bigfoot guy. I can be. I'm open minded enough I can be convinced, but I haven't seen anything compelling yet to sway me one way or the other.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like I said, I've touched upon it in the past, and hearing just witness testimony is great. But then it's when you look at people like Jeff Meldrum, who I don't know if he's a professor, but he works at a university, so he's got credentials, seems credible. When I sort of see things like that, then that puts me back in that the possibility is definitely there again. And it depends who I watch and what I see, but yeah, not enough for me to sort of conclude either
There's
way.
that Forrest Gallant guy too.
Yeah.
He's been on Rogan a couple times. He's actually looking for the thylacine, which is the Tasmanian tiger that went extinct like 100 years ago. But people have been seeing them. So that's one where it's like, and I was talking about this with Daniel on Mind Escape one night. I mean, that's plausible to me. Like, that is something, another plausible thing would be some unknown primate. But is there an unknown primate all over the United States? You know what I'm saying? So it's like, where do we draw the line? If we're talking like Indonesia, rainforest or something like that, I could be convinced, of a primate, a hidden primate. But, people are saying in the comments right now, maybe he's boneless. Well, maybe, but I mean, I know the big thing is interdimensional or non-physical, right? So,
Yeah, and when I hear that, then that links into the the UFO phenomena, because we kind of hear that possibility being a part of
Somebody
our
just said
subject.
a hairy orb.
I like that. That's cool. It could all be connected. It could be just complete all nonsense. Again, it's just I'm just willing to keep going, to keep looking for the answers, and doing my little small part to kind of try and get there. It may be
And
pointless.
I think it makes sense too. I was speaking with Jonathan Dover yesterday, and he was kind of pointing out every time they have a rise in Bigfoot sightings on the Navajo reservation, there's a rise in UFO sightings. So, like you said, it could all just be part of the same phenomenon presenting itself as different things to different people.
Yeah,
Shout
why
out
not?
Maximo.
Yeah, I mean, like with Jacques Vallée control system, passport to Magonia presenting itself as different things that you would identify with or are interested in. Could be. I mean, that's what I'm saying. I don't rule any of that out. I would just like to see more, I guess, evidence. I don't know. Because there is evidence, but it's like, is it credible? I don't know.
Yeah.
So let's talk about Disclosure Team now. Now, how long ago did you start doing Disclosure Team?
So that was the initial Instagram page that I started. I think it was towards the end of 2020. It was originally called Disclosure 2020 because I didn't think it was going to go anywhere or I was even going to do anything with it. And then as we kind of jumped into 2021, I was like, I better change it to Disclosure 2021. And then after a few months, it started building up, it started becoming something. I was like, I just can't keep changing it year by year if I keep doing this. So Disclosure Team, I built up quite a nice little community, and I thought it's a team. I speak to my community all the time. So together we are the team looking for disclosure. That was kind of the reason behind the name. And yeah, so it was nothing but an Instagram page and a community that I built there. And then of course, James Ian Doley persuaded me to do my YouTube channel. Shout out to James. He just kept saying, you should do it. And I just jumped in and did it. So of course I kept the name for that. And it's kind of stuck by me all along. I do kind of use my own name a little bit more these days, just because why not? It's who I am. But yeah, and then I'm also a part of UAP Media UK. So I've got all these kind of groups that I'm working with, and I don't really care. I just want to do the work, and I'll be known by what I'm known by. Do you know what I mean? It's just, yeah.
No, that's awesome, man. Yeah, so I mean, I definitely noticed. Let's see. I think I jumped on Twitter, which was at the time at the very early stages of what was known as UFO Twitter now. And I noticed over the first couple of years, like slowly, all these people from the UK and in Europe and stuff started really getting involved, and you guys created all these different media companies and podcasts and all the social media stuff. And I thought that was very interesting. And the interesting thing to me, and I've talked about this with many of my other English guests, is there's two different schools of thought. Like, for instance, when I think of English people, you think of like very skeptical or steeped in skepticism. I don't know how to put this, but usually there's not a lot of like mystical thinking. It's more pragmatic way of life from some of the people I talk to. But I've had a lot of people on Mind Escape, like Dick Kahn and a lot of these psychonauts and people associated with the psychedelic community and stuff like that, that does exist. It's just portrayed differently, to the public. I mean, do you feel that way? Do you feel like it used to be like kind of taboo to talk about UFOs or psychedelics and things like that, and now it's kind of shifting a little bit? Or
I don't really see the shift, to be honest. I mean, if I look at myself here in the city I live in, once I'm outside my house, I'm just back to being a regular dude because I have no one to talk to the subjects anywhere I go. So I'm literally just a regular dude, a dad and stuff like that. And I think that's the thing with the UK is all these people who are open to the subject or involved with it are just scattered around. There's no like, there's no one place that's got more of it. Maybe London because it's bigger, but it's just a strange thing that we all just pop up online because that's where we find our our release, because we can meet up with people like you guys and everyone else that we speak to on our shows and on social media and everything. It's kind of where we live on this subject. I think it's just strange that the taboo and the stigma very much is still in the public domain. So hopefully, I think maybe there's a little shift here and there. We see it in the press, but
It
not as
is
much as we
interesting
kind of.
because there is a rich history there. I mean, even like ancient mysticism, like the Druids. You have all the megalithic sites from Orkney all the way down, Stonehenge, Avebury. You have all those amazing places in Ireland. You've got can't think of the name right now. Newgrange. So you
Yeah,
have
yeah.
and then you have a lot of like burial mounds too, which are obviously connected to a lot of mystery with the ancient cultures and stuff like that too. So it's part of the DNA, right? But then like the modern culture aspect of it is kind of, what drove me crazy is I saw an article like last year where they were trying to like build a highway through Stonehenge or like right around Stonehenge or something. Like,
Yeah.
dude, like that's what you're known for. What are you doing? Like preserve these things. Like this, this is part of, I don't know. Maybe I'm going on a rant here, but
No, you did raise a good point because folklore in this country is huge, but it's all to do with humanity and our history and what we got up to thousands of years ago, building these structures and things like that, and the Druids and things. So you do bring up a good point, and that's probably more acceptable to talk about because it's humans, it's what we've done in the past. So if you started throwing out potential of aliens landing their UFOs at Stonehenge, then it's going to be nope. People don't want to talk about that. So I
what's
think
the
there's that slight
consensus?
difference.
What's the consensus of Rendlesham Forest among people from the UK?
I don't think there's any kind of, I think it differs person by person. For me, I'm just really in the middle. I don't know which way to go with it. I don't know what it was. I don't know. I don't know if it was ET. I don't know if it was some military thing. It's difficult. Yeah, again, there are so many cases that we may never get to the bottom of. We're talking 40 years. It's gone 4 years. So what could possibly come up from it now? It's just, that's why I tend not to focus on that. But then I say that, and I've been looking at cases from the 60s and the 50s. So it's different. It's weird. I don't know. I just find I find a case that just grabs me, and then I investigate it because there is data out there that very few people have kind of done anything with, and it does sometimes relate to a lot of the cases that we see nowadays or hear about. So I'm just trying to make connections with obscure cases sometimes. Because and you mentioned Rendlesham. One case is the 1956 Rendlesham case where saucers were captured on radar, seen by military pilots. We've got the testimony. We've got a lot of documents between the military brass talking about it. And I think there's more information and data on that Rendlesham case than there is the 1980s. So it's strange. Yeah.
Interesting.
Hold on, I gotta grab something to show off.
What is like? What do you think is the most interesting UFO case to you, based on what you've looked into or studied?
Oh, wow. That's a difficult question. Most interesting. I mean, I could probably give multiple answers. If I think about the modern day ones, the one that I still come back to is obviously the Nimitz encounter. I think that's just a huge case that probably a lot of people that got into the subject, that was their first case, especially since after the 2017 thing. But yeah, the one I mentioned, the Rendlesham 1956, is huge. There was a lot of stuff around the early 50s in the UK that I've been looking at, which I think are really compelling. And a lot of it is because of the testimony of the witnesses. We've got some interviews, recorded interviews, and it's when you can hear it in their voice when they're telling these stories that's a lot more compelling than when you just read it on a bit of paper. So yeah, there's the couple of shows I've done on my channel. One was Operation Main Brace from the 50s, and that Rendlesham one. Covered them with David Clark, and David, I'm lucky. I say I don't have anyone around me. David lives a mile down the road from me, so we regularly meet up for a beer in the pub and just talk about stuff. And he's kind of almost like, I see him as a bit of a mentor these days about how to go about investigating stuff. I've definitely learned a lot from him. And so he's introduced me to a lot of these more obscure cases. And so they're the ones I'm really excited about these days. And like I said, building connections to kind of what we're seeing these days.
Absolutely. Uh-oh.
Oh, nice. Oh, you got a signed one.
Got my copy in.
I got one downstairs. Oh, nice.
So everybody, if you haven't yet, order a copy of Estimate of the Situation. Fantastic. Thank you again for sending me that. I'm going to take the signed artwork and hang it up at the Roswell Daily Record. So maybe next to a UFO front page or something cool.
Yeah,
So
that's a
cool.
great piece of work.
So cool, Toby. No, shout out to Estimate. That's awesome, man. And you deserve all the credit that you've been getting, for sure. So yeah, I really love what you're doing. I think we're gonna probably wrap it up here because I know you gotta go. But we'll definitely have you back on. We'll have you back on when Shane's here too. It was just kind of a last minute thing. Shane's little trip to go see one of his favorite rock stars of all time. But no, I really appreciate what you're doing. I did love Phenomenology. I of course always love what Dan's doing, and yeah, I look forward to season 2. Did you say when that was maybe going to come out, or you didn't know because how long?
Well, we're going to we're going to film in April next year. So if we're looking at a similar time scale, February, March, another 5 months after that. So we're talking late summer 23, possibly, maybe sort of in the fall.
Maybe you
Awesome.
need to premiere it in Roswell.
It's not a bad shout.
Speaking of which, Vinnie is going to be part of the event that my company holds next July, the Roswell incident. We're still working out the details. Obviously, Mike will be there, Shane will be there, filled with edibles and probably passed out in a corner somewhere. Chase is going to be there, Astral, hopefully Maximo. But if not there, my buddy Maximo hosts the big film festival in Argentina. If not, you could do your premiere there if you wanted.
Amazing. Definitely. I mean, nearer the time, let's talk. I'm open to all these collaborations, and I think it's just, and this is one thing that I've really enjoyed in the community.
It's in South America. You know, you're right there. They probably understand it better than most.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, I was just going to say, these kind of meeting you guys, speaking for the last, however long, it's just, this is what I thrive on, is working together, because I've had so much help, and I hope that I've been able to help other people as well. I think the community, when it works well together, really kind of does some good work. So yeah, thank you guys.
Yeah, absolutely. That's what we're all about, bringing people together. I hate all the drama nonsense, let's bring credible takes to the topic. Let's talk about it from a philosophical, scientific / credible, mystical way. And I think we're all kind of doing that in our own way. You guys are getting out there doing research. We all are doing our research in the best ways we can. And look, if you're out there complaining about it and you're waiting for this report or that report and what's going on, and I've never get out there, start doing research, go, hook up with some people and, put a team together or whatever, get involved, that's the way to do it. Yeah. So that's how anything's going to get done, basically. So, but listen, this was awesome, Vinny. If anybody's interested, you can check out Vinny's stuff. I have the link down below at the bottom for his all links. And we'll definitely have him back on when Shane's on in the future. If you're interested in supporting our new podcast, the Roswell UFO Symposium, please click the Linktree link down below. We've got all the social media stuff. We'd appreciate a 5-star review on Spotify and Apple Podcast if you could. We love you, everybody listening. Shout out to, again, Toby. Thank you. We are going to be premiering Maurice and I's documentary, The Experiences, there in March. So we're probably going to change the title because of the UAP Saucer Co. fiasco. I don't want that in the title now. But other than that, it'll probably be roughly the same thing. It's going to be on, UFO, UAPs, experiencers / people with mystical experiences / DMT and entities. And I'm sure a lot of you have seen the trailer. If you haven't already, you can go check out my Mind Escape link tree, which has all those links in there as well. And special shout out though, it's Veterans Day. If you want to support your veterans, we have the Wounded Warrior link down below. If you feel like giving a little bit of money, I know be really appreciated. Shane, if you haven't heard Shane's story, go listen to our previous episode where he lays it all out there and why it's important to contribute to stuff like Wounded Warrior and stuff like that, because it does make a huge difference. And these guys are they're heroes. They're out there preventing we're able to live the lives that we live because of them and freedom. And it's important to contribute to that. So, and they're people and, they're struggling. So
actually, I wanted to announce too, Tom Reed is donating 4 tickets free for veterans. They should be available through the vettix.org website sometime in the next week or two. So I hope we can get some vets out there and have a good time with everybody. We'll see how good Mike's after party is after his movie premiere.
Oh, it'll be banging, bro. If I'm coming into town, I'm not coming for no reason. So, but yeah. So again, check out Vinny's links, check out Roswell UFO Symposium links, and check out Mind Escape links. Shout out to Randall Carlson. I just did an episode with him, but he was just on Joe Rogan yesterday. Also check out Graham Hancock's new series on Netflix called Ancient Apocalypse, which is, I haven't seen it yet, but I imagine it's going to be phenomenal. I plan on starting to watch that tonight. So, again, we love everybody. Stay safe out there, and we'll catch you next time. Peace.